For 3,000 years, Homer's Odyssey has been the defining story of homecoming. The ancient Greek word is nostos. It means more than getting back to your house. It's the restoration of your family, your identity, and your rightful place in the world. Christopher Nolan took that story and made it about something else: guilt. And Emily Wilson, the classicist Nolan publicly cited as his inspiration, just told him exactly where it went wrong. Her sharpest line isn't even about the plot. It's about one relationship Nolan gutted so badly it threatens the whole ending. We're getting to that line. Stay with me. Nolan told Empire magazine that Wilson's opening line, "Tell me about a complicated man," helped unlock the character for him. He praised Odysseus as clever, inventive, strategic, wily. Then Wilson watched the movie. Her verdict? The writing abysmal, the characters underdeveloped, and Nolan's Odysseus neither especially complicated nor particularly wily. This isn't about demanding a page-for-page adaptation. Every adaptation changes for Homer. The question is whether Nolan removed the story's actual meaning and replaced it with the same psychological machinery he brings to nearly every film he makes. But before we get into why, we need to deal with the conversation happening around this movie. The Odyssey, it's a runaway success. Critics like it, audiences like it. It's heading toward $1 billion plus worldwide. None of that means everyone was required to like it, and definitely doesn't mean every piece of criticism, well, those are chuds. A movie can be acclaimed, profitable, and still have real faults. Those are contradictions. That's just criticism. The thing we used to have before every movie became a team sport. And that's where Emily Wilson comes in. So there's 3 parts to today's video. Part 1, what nostos actually means, and the moral universe Homer built around it. Part 2, what happens when Nolan swaps that universe for guilt. Part 3, the marriage Wilson says Nolan broke, and why breaking it breaks everything else. The poem covers a lot of ground: identity, justice, violence. But the structure holding it all together is nostos, the return home. The Odyssey spends 10 years fighting at Troy and another 10 trying to get back. Along the way, he loses ships, his crew, his status, and at one point, even his name. He calls himself, I quote, nobody. Getting home means becoming Odysseus again, king of Ithaca, husband of Penelope, a man restored to his place in the world. Calypso offers him immortality. He refuses. The Phoenicians offer safety and status. He still wants Ithaca. Not because Ithaca has better beaches, because his family, his identity, and his purpose are there. Home also has a moral order. That journey happens inside a universe governed by divine rules, chief among them Xenia, the sacred obligation of hospitality between host and guest. The Cyclops isn't a monster just because he's big and unpleasant. He violates Xena. Instead of feeding his guests, he feeds on them. Odysseus blinds him, and then his pride makes it worse. He shouts his real name on the way out, which lets the Cyclops call on his father Poseidon. The suitors commit the same violation from the inside. They occupy Odysseus' home, burn through his wealth, threaten his son. Their slaughter is brutal and uncomfortable on purpose. But inside the poem's own logic, it's the restoration of order. The home was corrupted. The king returns. Judgment follows. None of this makes Odysseus a clean hero. He lies, manipulates, makes disastrous calls. His intelligence saves everyone. His pride gets them killed. That contradiction, not guilt, contradiction, is what makes him complicated. Now hand that story to Christopher Nolan. Nolan is one of the great visual filmmakers alive. And he also has a type. Fractured memory, emotional repression, obsessive men carrying enough guilt to need their own baggage carousel. Leonard in Memento, Cobb in Inception, unable to let go of his life. Bruce Wayne turning childhood grief into a military-industrial bat problem. Oppenheimer reliving the consequences of what he built. Nolan's characters aren't just affected by the past, they're imprisoned by it. That's the frame he puts on Odysseus. Wilson's argument, Matt Damon's version is driven less by cunning than by anxiety and guilt. That distinction matters. Guilt is an emotion. Cunning is a method. Homer builds the journey around the method. Nolan builds his around emotion. The Trojan War becomes Odysseus' original sin. The journey stops being about defeating what's keeping him from home and becomes a reckoning of what he did during the war. Instead of a man trying to restore his place in the world, Nolan gives us a man wondering if he deserves one. And once guilt replaces nostos, everything else follows it inward. The monsters stop being independent threats and become reflections of Odysseus' own damage. The Lotus Eaters become a metaphor for addiction. The sirens become the voices of dead soldiers instead of a literal external trap. The external world stops testing him. It starts psychoanalyzing him. Even Poseidon's rage stops being a god's vendetta and starts reading like a sea and is hostile because Odysseus believes he deserves to drown. Homer asks whether a man can navigate fate, divine power, and his own pride. Nolan asks whether a traumatized man can live with himself. Both are legitimate questions. They're just not the same question. A quick gut check here because I already know what's forming in the comments. This isn't Nolan bad because it's different from the book. Different is fine. Every adaptation is different. The actual problem is specific. Nolan kept the word complicated and swapped out the exact same thing that made Homer's version complicated in the first place. Keep that in mind because part 3 is where it does the most damage. Wilson's sharpest criticism is about Penelope. She said the role had been reduced enough to threaten whether the audience believes in the marriage at all. That matters because Penelope isn't the wife waiting at the finish line. She's Odysseus' intellectual equal. He survives abroad through deception. She survives at home through deception, weaving a burial shroud by day, secretly unraveling it by night to stall the suitors. When Odysseus finally returns, she doesn't just accept him, she tests him, using the secret of their marriage bed. Built around a living olive tree, impossible to move without destroying it. Their marriage works because they speak the same strategic language. Home isn't just a building he reaches, it's a private understanding shared by two people. If Penelope is reduced, Ithaca becomes an abstract destination. Odysseus keeps saying he needs to get home. But the film never fully dramatizes who home actually is. And if you don't believe in the marriage, you weaken nostos itself, which is the bigger argument Wilson is actually making. Not that Nolan changed the poem, that he removed its complexity without replacing it with drama convincing enough to earn the trade. In her own words, the film's vision is too confused, its characters too underdeveloped, to deliver on its own big ideas. And it lacks the poem's psychological, emotional, political, and ethical depth. Remember the line I opened with? One relationship Nolan gutted so badly it threatens the whole ending? That's this, the marriage bed. Homer uses one object, a bed built into a living tree, to prove two people know each other completely, and that's what makes the homecoming land. Wilson is saying Nolan never rebuilds that proof. So the ending plays like a man arriving somewhere, not a man being recognized by someone who spent 20 years being just as clever as he is. You kept the voyage, you missed the point. So let's close the loop on where we started. This video is not an argument that the Odyssey secretly failed, because it didn't. It's a critical and commercial success, and it's going to cross over $1 billion worldwide. None of that's in dispute. But box office and buzz don't inoculate a movie from craft criticism. A film can clear $1 billion and still have real specific structural problems. That's not hating. That's Emily Wilson, the actual classicist Nolan himself credited as inspiration, pointing out where the adaptation doesn't hold up. She praised the theatrical spectacle. She welcomed renewed interest in Homer. She credited Nolan with pulling audiences back into cinemas and readers back into classical literature. She's not the internet outrage machine. She's the source material expert saying the finished film didn't deliver what Nolan said he set out to build. That distinction matters. A movie can be worth $1 billion and worth criticizing. Those two things are allowed to coexist, even on the internet where nuance is usually the first thing thrown overboard. So did Christopher Nolan gut the Odyssey's real meaning? Based on the standard Nolan created for himself, Wilson has a pretty strong case. Nolan said he was inspired by a clever, inventive, and wily Odysseus. Wilson says the finished character is anxious, guilty, and dramatically simplified. Homer created a marriage between two intelligent people whose shared cunning makes the homecoming believable. Wilson says Penelope is reduced until the marriage becomes difficult to believe. Homer placed the journey inside a universe governed by God's hospitality, obligation, and divine consequence. Nolan replaces that with psychological realism and personal guilt. He did not fail because he changed Homer. Every adaptation changes Homer. The problem is that he changed the exact qualities he publicly claimed inspired him. He kept the voyage, he kept the ships, he kept the monsters, he kept the spectacle. According to Wilson, he misplaced the man, weakened the marriage, and gutted meaning. Nolan did not make the Odyssey modern. He made the Odyssey Nolan. And that leaves us with a larger question. In a culture obsessed with trauma and individual psychology, are we still capable of telling a story about nostos? Can modern Hollywood portray homecoming as the restoration of family, identity, and community? Or does every great story eventually become another maze inside one damaged man's head? Let me know what you think in the comments. Did Nolan successfully reinterpret the Odyssey? Or did he make Shutter Island on a boat? And can we admit the movie is a massive success without pretending it is beyond criticism? Do me a favor, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share it with someone who believes a faithful adaptation requires more than keeping the title and buying a bigger camera. I'm the Critical Nerd. Keep your expectations low and the receipts high, and I will see you later.